Hello and Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Daniel bin Ahmad, and as for today, I will explain on what is international terrorism. Okay, terrorism comes from a Latin word of terror, which means frightened. According to Oxford dictionaries, terrorism can be defined as an unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians. Okay, in the pursuit of political aims, NATO defined terrorism as the unlawful use or threatened use of force or violence against individual or property in an attempt to coerce or intimidate governments or society to achieve political, religion and ideology objective. However, Organization of Islamic Conference, OIC, proposed the definition of terrorism as an act carried out to achieve an inhuman and corrupt objective involving threat to security of any kind and violence of rights acknowledged by religion and mankind. Okay, let's continue. There are several types of the international terrorism that can be classified. Okay, firstly is domestic terrorism. Okay, this type of terrorism occurs within the border of a particular country and it focuses on their nation's political arena. Okay, not only confined to terrorist activities that have been carried out against the government, but also against racial, ethnic and religious groups. Okay, secondly is the national terrorism. Okay, this type of terrorism is about a loyalty and devotion to the nation, where the legitimate political activities designed to achieve autonomy, political freedom, equity or independence. Okay, a person who will be labeled as a terrorist by the government he opposed to. Okay, it is be noted that nationalist terrorism can be difficult to define, since many groups accused of the practice insist that they are not terrorists but freedom fighters. Okay, thirdly is religious terrorism. Okay, terrorism act throughout history has been performed on religious grounds with the goal to either spread or enforce a system of belief, viewpoint or opinion. Okay, religious terrorism is motivated by religious ideology, where they believe that God is on their side and their violence is divinely inspired and approved. Okay, this type of terrorism is perceived as the most dangerous kind of terrorism because they believe that violence is necessary for achieving goals, as they disregarded public opinion and safety. Okay, there are many terrorist groups that we can refer to, such as Abu Sayyaf Group, Al-Qaeda Group, the Lashkar-e-Taiba Group and many more. Okay, with that, this ends my introduction on what is international terrorism. I will pass the floor to the next presenter.
The first example of terrorism act is September 11 attack. It is a series of attacks that happened on 11 September 2001 at New York, USA. As the entire world is aware, a plane crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, or WTC, in Manhattan at 8:46 a.m. on September 11, 2001. Another plane struck the South Tower 18 minutes later. Both towers fell in less than 2 hours. The attack put a strain on New York City's social assistance, healthcare, and public health system. This attack was carried out by a multinational militant Sunni Islamic extremist group called Al-Qaeda, which was then led by Osama bin Laden. The aftermath of the attacks has resulted in Western and Islamic societies around the world being looked down upon by the world. Throughout the incident, Americans began to experience Islamophobia. Islamophobia is a phrase that describes xenophobic responses to the Islamic religion and Muslim in its own right. In contrast to what the xenophobic assertion would suggest, which is a fear of Islam, what exists is a hostility or a dislike of Islams and Muslims. The second example of terrorism act is Christchurch mosque shootings. On 15 March 2019, while a large crowd of Muslims had gathered for Friday prayers, a highly armed gunman attacked two mosques which are Al-Nur Mosque and Linwood Islamic Centre in Christchurch, New Zealand, killing 51 people and wounding many more. The shooting was live streamed by the gunman on Facebook Live. The damage he did to the second mosque was reduced due to the bravery of one of the mosque visitors who managed to seize his weapon and chase him. While the gunman is on his way to the third mosque, the cops stopped him. It is the worst massacre in New Zealand history. The shooter is an Australian white supremacist named Brenton Tarrant. The only maximum security facility in New Zealand, which is Auckland Prison, houses Tarrant at the moment. The Terrorist Suppression Act of New Zealand has been used for the first time against Tarrant. Tarrant entered a plea of guilty to 92 charges, including murder, attempted murder, and committing a terrorist act on March 26, 2020. He was later found guilty of all charges and given a life sentence. The motive of his attack is to create fear among the Muslim population. He described Muslims as invader of the country, which is New Zealand. According to House, Tarrant also expressed regret for not killing more people and had intended to set the mosque on fire.
Assalamualaikum, and my name is Anwar Shukri bin Muhammad, and I will continue and talk about our recommendation to fight terrorism. As terrorism has become an international threat for all countries in the world that can lead to a devastating event, these are some of our recommendations on how to fight or counter terrorism that can be implemented by the government of each country. Firstly, the first recommendation is to educate society about terrorism and ways to counter terrorism, especially for the young and adult people. Although terrorism has become an international problem, we need to admit that the awareness of it among our society is still very low. It is because some media have been spreading false information, and some have also not shared enough cases of terrorism that repeatedly happens around the world to maintain their company image. The government can create an event or seminar to spread out the word about terrorism and counter-terrorism to increase the knowledge of society. They also can focus on school to become the medium to blast the information. Although it is not 100% way to counter the issues, it can prevent our society, mainly our youngsters, to not fall into terrorism activities or agenda. Moreover, as the fact that those terrorism groups had huge amount of funds that makes them have the most powerful weapon and the latest technology that can make them look stronger than any country army. Because of that, the government need to upgrade their national defense to prepare from the terrorist attack or cyber war that can occur at any time. The government needs to start to invest more in national defense as these international issues has become more serious and the people have been worried. As the world evolves, there are many types of new technology specifically for firearms and war equipment that need to be implemented into the national army. It can give confidence back to the army as well as the people, as they know the national defense will come prepared if anything occurs. Lastly, the last recommendation to fight terrorism is to tighten internal relations with neighboring countries. As pointed out before, terrorism has become an international issue. All countries need to create a good relationship between their neighbor country. It is because it is better to have a lot of information, resources, and strategy together to counter terrorism from occurring, as it can cause a lot of headache. The country's leaders need to sit together to discuss the matter to achieve the objective to counter terrorism. Eventually, The borderline also can be more secure, as there will be a lot of cooperation arise if the relationship between countries exists. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Nasuha bin Muhammad Hazri Syam, 2022-9473 and 05. So in a conclusion from the terrorism, terrorism and the threat of terrorism will have psychological consequences for a major portion of the population, not merely a small minority. Research studies that have examined a range of terrorism events indicate that psychological reaction and psychiatric symptoms clearly develop in many individuals. To optimize the overall health and well-being of the population and to improve the overall response to terrorism events, it is necessary that these potential consequences be addressed preventively as well as through a phase of an event. Terrorism have become a global threat which need to be controlled from the initial level. Terrorism cannot be controlled by the law enforcing agency alone. The people in the world will also have to united in order to face this growing threat of terrorism. Terrorism is very much a reality of modern times. The mere threat of terrorism attack is enough to generate panic and fear among the general populace. We cannot deny that the fact of terrorism have affected policy decision to great extent. The internet has given terrorism organization a global platform to spread their agenda and recruit more people. However, it may be time for a more militaristic solution to the problem of global terrorism. That's all from me. Thank you.